You know, one of the problems that we face is the medical community. This spores out of the negative forces. It is the top killing machine on this planet. And Rockefeller and the boys did a really good job at instating this medical thought in humans. And it is stupid. Their theory holds no substance, has no substance in chemistry. When I look at that, now you've heard the latest. They found a new organ of the human body. I was going to save that, but you guys already heard that. I put it. Anytime we hear stuff like that, I'm going to put it out there because it's like, and half of us are going, you know, because the interstitium. Come on, these are interstitial spaces around all the cells, you know, and it's like that's the new organ of the body is the interstitium, the interstitial spaces. Well, you can take A and P, anatomy and physiology, and learn about the interstitial spaces, and it's like, oh, but this is the new organ, the largest organ of the human body. See, you guys know a little secret that the rest of this planet doesn't know, and that is the great lymphatic system. And if you don't understand that system, the sewer system, and the fact that it deals with the acid side of chemistry, then I don't know what you would know. When you think about that, think about if you didn't know that now. Go back and take that out of your mind. It's like, I don't know what causes that then. What would cause a tumor? I don't know. And if you don't understand that system, then everything is foreign. Interesting, isn't it? So they're about 50 years behind or more. I remember when I came along and got into supplements, that's the first thing you do in my field, you get into supplements. And it just didn't fit in consciousness. It didn't fit in holistic. Holistic isn't isolates. Holistic doesn't mean you isolate goodies like your B's and your C's or whatever. Holistic is whole, complete, raw, one. And we're the holistic field, but we're playing with some fields of dreams of the medical thinking. We play with isolates. We play with the theory of deficiencies. I come into a world of taught about deficiencies. Oh, the topsoils are slow and that kind of thing, you know. Everybody hear how far an alfalfa root has been discovered? They've discovered alfalfa roots 100 feet deep. So, why? I'm a plant. Am I going to go looking for food? Yeah. Heck yeah. Let me go look for food. But understanding genetics is important as well, you know, because we are dealing in cells. You know, when we look at the human body, obviously cells and fluids. I mean, what else do we have? So we have cells, structure, function. The cell makes up the whole body, obviously. And then we have the interstitium, the latest organ. The spaces in between the cells. How do we get to the cells? How do you feed them and clean them? How come cells aren't all clumped together, making up tissue, making up the liver, or making up the heart? Well, if they all clump together, how would you get in there and feed them and get their waste away from them? You can't. So even bone has interstitial spaces. Might be squeaky, but they're tight, but they're there. So important to realize these spaces is simply how we get in and feed and clean. So the genetics is really, when you look at this, if mind creates everything, the genetics is just the mind, isn't it? There's got to be a blueprint. So as we change the medium, whatever that is, through chemistry, then we can change the blueprint. So let's say you have the blueprint of the physical body. In the physical world, on the physical planet Earth, the dominant chemistry is alkaline. This is an alkaline dominant chemistry, a feminine planet. If it becomes acidic, then we pull in the corrosive side, the men's side, and the men like to go to war and rip things apart and tear things up. So that changes the blueprint. Now, can we change it back? Absolutely, because everything, remember, everything's just pure energy. When you look at chemistry and you drop chemotherapy on your hand, it just tears the skin off of it. Remember that when you take all this apart, take the cell apart, take the subatomic particles, the electrons and protons, you take everything apart, what do you have? Pure energy. And energy is what? Consciousness, awareness. It directs itself. So genetics is just the energetic morphodizing, I think, of a cell. And so when you turn this around and you bring the alkaline dominant back in, the cells then rebuild themselves. Now, there's a point where a cell can't do that anymore, and they call that a cancer cell. It's simply an atrophied or a mutated cell. And you could have 1, 2, 10, 100, who cares? You have 100 trillion in the body. And when a medical doctor goes into a tumor and pulls out a cell to see if it's cancerous, I guarantee you it doesn't matter. If you have a cell that's been damaged, all the cells in a tumor are going to someday be ripped apart and dead, because the tumor is just an acid sludge. So if it's a tumor that grows out of interstitial, then those cells in that area, they're gone. But to have a tumor, you have to have the lymph nodes involved, right? So to have the lymph nodes involved, when the cells are being damaged, you can't take those cells to the lymph nodes anymore. So you're stuck. So there's just burning and chewing those tissues. But since, remember, the lymphatic system is systemic, it burns and chews all over you. The duality of life. But I would get out of that in my perception. I would work from the now. And the more that you can do that, just all the answers come to you. And the more you can help and the more you can free yourself. And you want to free yourself and free others doing it. Because if you see this world is pretty gnarly right now. And the consciousness is all, things are being ripped all over the place. Look what's going on in this country with Trump and all that. It's amazing. So you could say, though, you think about sometimes the Supreme One or the divine being this being. But when you study and you begin to become aware of the fact that in Christianity they use the word omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient, that means there's nothing but the one. There's no spaces in between. There's no interstitial spaces. There's no God's here and over there is the devil, or God's here and over there is that. There's not a mama God. Everything is one. Difficult to understand that through the mind, because the mind works in divisions, comparisons, analyticals, things like this. But it comes out of one. It's just amazing when you go down this road, and you're starting to see more and more books in bookstores, talking about that. So again, holistic versus isolates, consciousness versus states of consciousness, intuitiveness versus thought. Sometimes it was once said that if you want to know how small the divine is, take a pin, cut the head of that pin in half, cut that half in half, cut that half in half, cut that half in half, and keep on going. And you'll never find the smallest part of God. I remember that, I can't remember what show, and I was telling someone about this the other day. It was on, I think, the Discovery Channel or something, but I just turned to this, and it was a picture of a bright white structure, like a 10-story building over here, and another bright white structure over here, like another 10-story building. And it was kind of like the Wintas or whatever those guys are that walk the tightrope. There was a rope from one building to the next building, and it was a rope of light. Now, does anybody know what a Tootsie Pop looks like, where you got a stick and a little Tootsie Roll thing on the top? It had a stick of light with a round top on it like that, going across that rope from one structure to another structure in the sub-nano levels of life. What the hell was that? Do you think we even know anything? So that's part of the problem using the mind in academics. Academics is based on other people's perceptions. And right now, man doesn't know very much about who he is, where he comes from, and life in general. Look at the medical profession. People trust that. White coats, stethoscopes, they think they're chemists, they know everything about life. They don't know crap. And that's what man has to understand. So you got your sub-nano levels. Then you got your nano levels. I don't know how powerful of a microscope do we need to see the nano levels. Anybody know? Way beyond the way out there. They've got this microscope now that, again, seeing those little structures that are like sub-nano levels, like what's going on. And some of these, who knows? Amazing stuff. Then what do you got? You got your basic subatomic particles. What are those? So that probably nano could be put into that. But basically, when we think of subatomic, we think of electrons and protons, right? Circling around a nucleus. And the protons are in the nucleus, and the electrons go around, right? Go around, orbits around them, right? So the more electrons that orbits around protons, what side of chemistry is that element or that structure in? What side? Alkaline. The more electrons, the more alkaline an atom is. So when you look at more protons, the more acidic it is, right? Well, acids tend to steal, men tend to steal women. So the more the acid an atom is, the more it steals electrons to make itself alkaline. It's called ionization. It's the movement of electrons back and forth. When you have movement of chemistry, you have energy released always. And it's your electrolytes. You hear a lot about your electrolytes. Those are the energetic, the alkaline principles that give up their electrolytes to the acids. But it brings in balance. So when you're detoxifying somebody, what are you doing? You're bringing in a lot of electrons at the subatomic level to pull in, to neutralize or bring into balance those acids or those high proton atoms. And that's all it is. It's just a constant game of stealing these back and forth. We could use the word hydration with this. We could use the word osmosis with this, so to speak. We could use the word diffusion with this. Because it's the constant flux of chemistry between these two poles of electricity. And there's electricity released. So that means there's an awareness released at a certain level always. So when you translate that back to your foods, and you realize all things have to come down through this God world. That's important to understand, that all things that exist in this physical world have to come through the God worlds, has to come through each of these levels. So here's a good case in point. A lot of young kids are coming back from the wars now because now they're using the bombs, and so they have no legs or arms. But there's a thing called the phantom limb syndrome, and I talk about where you can still feel it because it is still there astrally, but not there physically. See, they only blew the physical side off. They didn't blow the astral side off. And that's why you can still feel that structure, part of the blueprint. Yeah. And that's why it'd be interesting if someone was way up there, if you could get limbs to grow back, because you can get tissue to grow back in your body. Remember that? I've got thyroids to grow back, livers grow back, just eating an acid diet almost. So it's interesting when you start to get up into these high levels of regeneration. Look at the young lad that we had in our several classes that his parachute didn't open, and how he rebuilt himself. Pretty good. So, in looking at these subatomic particles, you just know the electrons and the protons, and then of course this forms the atom, and then atoms form elements, and then you have a periodic table in your book there. And it's really not to confuse the mind. I'll tell you, this is just for general information. If you just generally understand things, that's all you need. But you've got your electrolytes, you've got your alkalis, you've got your acids, you've got your gases, your halogens, which are your salt formers. So it's just chemistry. And there's a lot of new elements formed now. I remember there was a chemist in my office and we were talking about it, and he said probably man-made. So there's a lot of new man-made elements. It's amazing. So how we're going there. That's just how chemistry comes together to form matter, to form life. That's all it is. But what directs it to do that? That's the thing. What is directing matter to form images, to form embodiments? There has to be some intelligence, right, behind that, or it just happens. Nothing just happens. Don't let all this get to you. It's just for information. You got your different nonmetals, metals, all that kind of crap like that. And again, the movement of electrons, the protons. Sometimes I get ahead of myself here, but that's okay. Yeah, I mean, in observed science, we can see what affects chemistry. That's obvious. You know, and biochemists are into the zeta potentials and into this sort of thing. And I have a little of it in the book for you, but it's not really worthy of discussion because what we want is basic things, higher things. You're not going to sit with your clients and talk about electrons going across protons. I mean, they're going to go, see ya. Because they don't, you know, you're just going to sit there and put your arm around them and say, let me tell you what your problem is. I mean, let me teach you about acids. Now, we do have to learn about acids and base. There's only two sides of chemistry, and people get confused. I said, well, let me see. There's only two sides. You got two choices. And yet, you've got some, you know, that can't get with the two. The electrokinetic factors. Chemistry, again, is energy and form. And when you release that form, you release that energy. Kind of like when your form goes down, you pull out. When your body can't house you anymore, you go, okay, I'm out. You know, because that's just the way it is. You have to understand you are an infinite being, if you want to use that word. Now, all the different forces at play in the body, all the different energetic releases in the body. You've got ionization going on. You've got metabolism going on. You've got the Krebs cycle. You've got methylation. You've got endless amount of cycles going on. And when we think we know everything, that's the problem. There's so many processes going on, it's hard to understand them. And in my opinion, science isn't at the point of having enough of the picture to understand observed science. And the truth of it is when you read some of this stuff. Now, we have a lot of science journals that we get in the office there. And, of course, Attila and all of us and Marcy, we love science. So we're always looking. And it's amazing now that in science they can't duplicate what the medical doctors are claiming that chemotherapy is effectual. They can't copy any of these studies. So now some of the universities are going, liars. So this is the problem, you know. And there's so many people walking right up to the door of juicing, you know, chemotherapy juicing. And they just don't understand the extreme acid nature. It is no different than giving somebody Drano. Matter of fact, in nursing, that's what we call chemotherapy is Drano. And when I took IV therapy, you know, they show you pictures of what happens if you spill chemotherapy. Well, when they used to inject it in the brachial here, what happens when you spill it on it. You know, just what happens when acids rip you apart. Well, just take a look. In the end of the day, you're going to see tumors and everything else there. And just look what acids can do to tissue. It's just sad. You know. But again, it's just two sides of the case. It's chemistry. And man has to learn. Of course, there's nothing wrong with the food you eat because that's not chemistry, right? Can't matter what you eat, right? So I find that extremely asinine that this planet would ignore the fact of chemistry because medical doctors think they know, and yet what you eat doesn't matter. Then you think you know chemistry. That's the problem we're facing. And if a medical doctor laughs in your face, I would just go like that, you know, because they're the ones that don't know. I apologize about one thing is that I don't always follow my own outline. That's why I have an outline so I can follow it. But I always follow it. Because I'm an intuitive speaker, so I don't remember things. I just, whatever comes to me in the moment, because I don't want to pull myself back down into the mind again. Yuck. You ever see, I hate to beat them up so much, but I don't. But, you know, I once, there was a lady that is the granddaughter of Dr. Papillopoulos or whatever his name is, that developed the pap smear. So she wanted to, I didn't use the word diseases, but she had, you know, cervical cancer, and so she came to me and we cleaned that up for her. So she put together a little traveling group to inform women about cervical cancer. And she found 3 medical doctors that only did partial hysterectomies. And I'm the only naturopath talking about, why are you doing any of that? Why don't you just cure it? And I couldn't believe, as I was traveling with them and we were talking at different places, they would read their talk. And I'd look in the audience and half the people would leave and it was boring. And I'm going, gee, if you don't know your subject, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And it was embarrassing, I'll have to tell you. And the bottom line is everything is an energetic experience. If you lower energy, you lower consciousness, you lower performance. It's that simple. At a certain point of that, cells lose their functionability. Cells need energy to function. A good example is if you have a bad day on energy, I can't remember well, I can't think well. You ever have those days? Absolutely. And they're low energy days. The adrenals are down, maybe psychically, or maybe, you had a bad night or something. So energy is everything to thinking, to feeling. So if man is operating at around 6,000 angstroms of energy, and he is what you see, and then you double his energy when you put him on a fruit diet, what happens? He becomes more awake. See what happens to all of you guys. You become more awake, more answers start coming, more energy, more vitality. Your emotions stabilize, your thoughts stabilize. You put on an acid diet, your thoughts do that. They start chattering like a kid sometimes. You ever see little children, the difference of a baby raised on fruit and a baby raised on milks and all the other stuff? The baby's raised on fruit will be sitting there going, are you looking at auras? What are you looking at? I mean, these kids are incredible. And then the other kids raised on all the acid milks and all this are like this, colicky and everything like that.